The security footage didn't lie. At 3:47 p.m. on a Friday afternoon, outside Fletcher's hardware store on Main Street, a young man in designer sunglasses and a leather jacket shoved an elderly veteran to the ground with such force that the crack of the old man's hip breaking could be heard by witnesses 15 feet away. Marcus Trump, 23 years old, son of Police Chief Robert Trump, had been asked, politely, to move his brand-new Mercedes that was blocking the entrance to the store where 78-year-old Harold Peterson was trying to enter with his walker. "Get out of my way, old man," Marcus had sneered, according to 4 witnesses. When Harold, a decorated Korean War veteran with 40 years of service to the community, had responded with gentle firmness, "Son, there's a parking spot right there. Just trying to get my supplies," Marcus had exploded. The shove sent Harold sprawling backward onto the concrete. His walker clattered away. His hip shattered. His head struck the pavement, opening a gash that required 12 stitches. Marcus didn't call for help. He didn't apologize. He got in his car and drove away while Harold lay bleeding on the sidewalk, crying out in pain. Within hours, the security footage had gone viral. The local news picked it up. Then the national outlets. Social media erupted in fury. Harold Peterson wasn't just any elderly man. He'd taught Sunday school for 30 years. He'd coached Little League. He'd organized food drives and visited sick children at the hospital. Everyone in Riverside knew Harold. Everyone loved Harold. And everyone saw what Marcus Trump had done to him. The police had no choice but to arrest Marcus. The district attorney filed charges: assault and battery, reckless endangerment, and leaving the scene of an incident causing serious injury. Harold spent 2 weeks in the hospital. His hip required surgery. Doctors said he might never walk without assistance again. The community demanded justice. Protests formed outside the courthouse. Signs read, "No-one is above the law," and "Justice for Harold." The trial date was set. But an unexpected revelation was about to change everything in the courtroom. The courtroom was packed beyond capacity. People lined the walls. News cameras crowded the back row. The air felt heavy, electric with tension and expectation. Judge Margaret Chen, a 62-year-old jurist with 30 years on the bench, entered with her characteristic calm dignity. She'd presided over murders, corruption trials, and gang cases. Nothing rattled her. Her reputation for fairness was legendary, and so was her intolerance for disrespect. "All rise," the bailiff announced. Everyone stood except Marcus Trump, who remained slouched in his chair until his lawyer yanked him up by the elbow. Marcus entered the courtroom like he was walking into a nightclub. Designer suit, smirk on his face, phone in his hand until the bailiff confiscated it. He made eye contact with no one except to shoot dismissive glances at the crowd. When asked to enter his plea, Marcus leaned toward the microphone with theatrical boredom. "Not guilty," he drawled. "This whole thing is blown way out of proportion. The old guy was in my way, and he fell. Not my fault he's fragile." A collective gasp filled the courtroom. Someone shouted, "Shame!" Judge Chen's gavel cracked once, hard. "Order," she said quietly. Her voice was steel wrapped in silk. The prosecution presented the security footage. It played on the large monitor for everyone to see. Marcus's violent shove. Harold's body crumpling. The sickening sound of impact. Marcus yawned. When Harold Peterson himself was called to testify, wheeled to the witness stand in a wheelchair because his recovery was still incomplete, the courtroom fell silent. Harold spoke slowly, with dignity. His voice shook, but his words were clear. "I don't hate this young man," Harold said, looking at Marcus. "But I want him to understand what he's done. I may never walk my granddaughter down the aisle at her wedding next year. I can't teach my Sunday school class standing up anymore. I wake up every night in pain. And what hurts most is that he didn't care. He just drove away." Marcus rolled his eyes. Actually rolled his eyes in front of everyone. "Your Honor," Marcus interrupted loudly, "can we speed this up? I have plans tonight." Judge Chen's expression didn't change, but her eyes grew colder. She leaned forward slowly. "Mr. Trump," she said, her voice dropping to a dangerous quiet, "you will sit. You will remain silent unless addressed by the court. And you will show respect to this proceeding and to Mr. Peterson, or I will hold you in contempt. Do I make myself clear?" Marcus laughed. Actually laughed. "You know who my father is?" The courtroom erupted. The judge's gavel came down 3 times like gunshots. "Silence!" Judge Chen commanded. Then to Marcus, "I don't care if your father is the President of the United States. In this courtroom, you are a defendant accused of a serious crime, and you will conduct yourself accordingly." Marcus opened his mouth to respond, and then someone stood up in the back of the courtroom. The man who rose from the back row wore his police chief's uniform. Robert Trump, 58 years old, had been sitting hidden among the crowd, his face lined with exhaustion and shame. Judge Chen's eyes narrowed. "Chief Trump." "Your Honor," Robert said, his voice thick with emotion. "May I approach?" A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Marcus's lawyer looked panicked. Marcus himself went pale. "Dad," Marcus said, his arrogance cracking. "What are you?" "Be quiet, Marcus," Robert roared, and the entire courtroom flinched. Judge Chen studied the police chief for a long moment, then nodded. "Approach." Robert walked to the front of the courtroom. Every eye followed him. When he reached the witness stand area, he turned to face his son. "Your Honor, members of this court, Mr. Peterson, and everyone here," Robert began, his voice breaking. "I need to speak." "This is highly irregular," the judge said carefully. "I know. But the court needs to hear this. And my son needs to hear this." Judge Chen nodded slowly. "Proceed." Robert took a deep breath. When he spoke, his voice carried across the silent courtroom. "I have failed as a father." Tears streamed down his face. "I gave my son everything: money, privilege, protection. And in doing so, I created a monster who thinks he's above the law I've spent 30 years enforcing." Marcus's face crumpled. "Dad, don't." "I said be quiet." Robert's voice shook the walls. Then, softer, "For once in your life, Marcus, be quiet and listen." Robert turned to Harold Peterson. "Mr. Peterson, I know you. You taught my older daughter in Sunday school. You helped my family when my wife was sick. You're a good man, a decorated veteran, a pillar of this community. And my son—" His voice broke. "My son put you in the hospital and showed no remorse." Harold nodded gently, his eyes compassionate even through the pain. Robert turned back to Judge Chen. "Your Honor, I'm here to tell you, and to tell the world, that I will not use my position to protect my son. I will not make phone calls. I will not pull strings. I will not ask for leniency he hasn't earned." The courtroom was so quiet you could hear the clock ticking on the wall. "In fact," Robert continued, his voice strengthening, "I'm here to ask you to apply the full weight of the law. My son needs to understand that actions have consequences, that arrogance and cruelty have a price, that no one, N-O-1, is above the law." Marcus's arrogance shattered completely. He began to cry, his face in his hands. "I love my son," Robert said, his voice raw. "But I love justice more. I love this community more. And I love the badge I wear too much to let it be tarnished by protecting someone who doesn't deserve protection." He turned to Marcus one final time. "Son, I will always love you. But today, I choose what's right over what's easy." Robert Trump sat down. The courtroom remained absolutely silent. Judge Chen's expression was unreadable. She looked at Marcus, then at Harold, then at Robert. "Does the defendant wish to address the court before sentencing?" she asked. Marcus Trump could barely stand. His legs felt like water beneath him. The confident young man who had strutted into the courtroom hours earlier was gone, replaced by someone broken, exposed, and terrified. His lawyer, David Morrison, a seasoned defense attorney who had seen everything in 30 years of practice, steadied Marcus by the elbow and whispered urgently, "Whatever you say now, make it real. This is your only chance." Judge Chen's eyes swept across the courtroom, taking in the packed gallery, the news cameras, Harold Peterson in his wheelchair, Chief Robert Trump sitting with his head in his hands, and finally settling on Marcus. "Does the defendant wish to address the court before sentencing?" she asked, her voice cutting through the thick silence. Marcus nodded, unable to speak at first. He walked to the podium on shaking legs, gripping its edges to keep from collapsing. "Your Honor," he began, his voice barely above a whisper. He cleared his throat and tried again. "Your Honor, I don't have the words to express how ashamed I am." He turned toward Harold Peterson, forcing himself to look the elderly veteran in the eye, something he'd avoided doing throughout the entire trial. "Mr. Peterson," Marcus's voice broke, "I am so deeply sorry. What I did to you was cruel, cowardly, and unforgivable. You didn't deserve any of it. You were just trying to live your life, and I—" He couldn't continue. Tears streamed down his face. Harold sat quietly in his wheelchair, his weathered hands folded in his lap, his expression unreadable. Marcus wiped his eyes and turned back to Judge Chen. "I thought I was special. I thought rules didn't apply to me. I thought being Chief Trump's son meant I could do whatever I wanted. I was wrong about everything." He glanced at his father, whose face was a mask of pain and pride intermingled. "My father just showed me what real strength looks like, what real love looks like. He could have protected me, but instead he chose to save me. And I know now that those are two very different things." Marcus's voice grew steadier, more sincere. "Whatever sentence you give me, Your Honor, I deserve it. And I promise you, I promise this court, I promise Mr. Peterson, I promise my father, and I promise this community, that I will use whatever time I have to become a better man. A man worthy of a second chance." He stepped back from the podium and stood with his hands clasped in front of him, head bowed, waiting. Judge Margaret Chen regarded him for a long, measuring moment. She'd been a judge long enough to know the difference between a performance and genuine remorse. She'd seen countless defendants cry, apologize, and promise to change, only to reoffend within months. But she'd also seen transformation. She'd seen people hit rock bottom and choose to climb back up. And she'd seen the power of consequences administered with both firmness and wisdom. "Mr. Trump," Judge Chen began, her voice resonating through the courtroom, "you are 23 years old. You come from privilege. You've had every advantage, education, resources, connections. Yet you chose to use those advantages to harm rather than to help, to take rather than to give, to destroy rather than to build." She paused, letting her words sink in. "You committed a violent assault against Harold Peterson, a man who has given more to this community in 1 year than you've given in your entire life. A decorated veteran. A Sunday school teacher. A man who has spent decades lifting others up while you've spent your youth pushing people down." Marcus kept his head bowed, tears dripping onto the defense table. "You fled the scene of that assault, leaving Mr. Peterson bleeding on the pavement. You showed no remorse. You mocked these proceedings. You demonstrated contempt for this court, for the law, and for basic human decency." Judge Chen's voice hardened. "In another courtroom, with another judge, you might have received the maximum sentence, 5 years in state prison. And you would have deserved every day of it. A murmur rippled through the gallery. Marcus's mother, sitting in the third row, let out a sob. "However," Judge Chen continued, and the courtroom held its breath, "your father has just demonstrated extraordinary courage and moral clarity. He has given you something precious: accountability. He has refused to let you hide behind his badge or his influence. He has loved you enough to let you face consequences." She leaned forward, her gaze piercing. "And Mr. Peterson, the man you brutalized, has shown you grace you don't deserve. He has offered you forgiveness without excusing your actions. These two men have given you gifts, Mr. Trump, and I intend to ensure you don't squander them." Judge Chen opened her sentencing file, though everyone knew she'd already made her decision. "Marcus William Trump," Judge Chen's voice rang out with formal authority, "this court hereby sentences you as follows." The courtroom was so silent that the scratch of the court reporter's pen seemed loud. "You are sentenced to 2 years in the county correctional facility, with the possibility of work release eligibility after 6 months, contingent upon exemplary behavior and the completion of required programming." Marcus closed his eyes, swaying slightly. His lawyer steadied him. "Upon release, you will serve 3 years of supervised probation. During that probation period, you will be subject to random drug and alcohol testing, mandatory counseling sessions, and regular check-ins with your probation officer. Any violation will result in the remainder of your sentence being served in full." Judge Chen turned the page. "You are ordered to complete 500 hours of community service, specifically working with elderly veterans at facilities designated by the probation department. This service will begin immediately upon work release eligibility and will continue throughout your probation." Harold Peterson nodded slowly, a hint of approval in his eyes. "You will attend and successfully complete anger management therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, and a course on empathy and emotional intelligence. You will provide proof of attendance and progress reports to this court every 3 months." The judge's voice grew even more stern. "You are ordered to pay full restitution to Harold Peterson for all medical expenses, both past and future, including ongoing physical therapy, medication, and assistive devices. Additionally, you will pay $50,000 in damages for pain and suffering, and you will cover all lost wages Mr. Peterson has incurred due to his inability to work." Marcus's mother gasped at the amount. Marcus himself showed no reaction. He was beyond caring about money now. "Furthermore," Judge Chen added, "and this is non-negotiable, you will write a personal letter of apology to Mr. Peterson. Not a letter crafted by your attorney, not a statement prepared by a public relations consultant, but your words, in your handwriting, expressing your genuine remorse. And you will read that letter aloud in this courtroom before the public and before Mr. Peterson. This reading will be scheduled 3 months from today, and your work release eligibility is contingent upon its completion." She closed the file and looked directly at Marcus. "Mr. Trump, I want you to understand something. This sentence is designed not merely to punish you, but to transform you. Jail time will remove you from the environment that enabled your worst instincts. Community service will teach you humility and gratitude. Therapy will help you understand why you made the choices you made. And facing Mr. Peterson again will force you to truly reckon with the harm you've caused." Judge Chen's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "You're young. Your life is not over. But the life you had, the life of entitlement, arrogance, and cruelty, that life ends today. What comes next is entirely up to you." She raised her gavel. "Does the defendant understand this sentence?" "Yes, Your Honor," Marcus said, his voice hoarse but clear. "Thank you, Your Honor. This court is adjourned." The gavel came down with a sharp crack that felt like a door closing on one chapter and opening on another. As the bailiffs approached to take Marcus into custody, Chief Robert Trump stood once more. Judge Chen, who was gathering her papers, looked up in surprise. "Your Honor," Robert said, his voice stronger now, steadied by the rightness of what he was doing, With your permission, I'd like to address my son and this court one final time." Judge Chen studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Proceed, Chief Trump." Robert walked to the center of the courtroom, positioning himself where Marcus could see him clearly. The bailiffs paused, allowing this final exchange. "Marcus," Robert began, and his son looked up with red, swollen eyes, "the judge has given you her sentence. Now I'm going to give you mine." Marcus's face crumpled with fresh tears, but he nodded, accepting whatever was coming. "Effective immediately, you are financially cut off from the Trump family. No trust fund. No allowance. No credit cards tied to family accounts. When you get out of jail, you'll receive no family money, no loans, no safety net beyond basic human necessities." Robert's voice was firm but not cruel. "You will find your own housing. You will find your own job, on your own merit, without using my name or connections. You will pay your own bills, buy your own food, and learn what it means to earn your place in this world rather than inherit it." Marcus's mother started to protest, but Robert held up his hand. "Jennifer, I love you, but this is non-negotiable. Our son needs to learn what 99% of Americans already know, that you work for what you have, that respect is earned, and that your last name doesn't entitle you to anything." He turned back to Marcus. "If you want a relationship with me, with your mother, with your sister, you'll have to earn it back. Not with words, but with actions. Not with promises, but with proof." Robert's voice softened slightly. "I will come visit you once a month while you're incarcerated. I will answer your letters. I will be there when you read your apology to Mr. Peterson. But I will not make your life easier. I will not shield you from discomfort. Because discomfort is what builds character, son. Struggle is what builds strength." He stepped closer to the defense table. "You have the potential to be a good man, Marcus. I've seen glimpses of it over the years. The kid who cried when we had to put down our dog, the teenager who stayed up all night helping your sister study for her SATs, the young man who organized that charity 5K 2 years ago." Robert's voice thickened with emotion. "That good person is still in there somewhere. But he's been buried under layers of entitlement, arrogance, and cruelty. The only way to excavate him is through hard work, genuine remorse, and real consequences." He placed his hand over his heart. "I love you, Marcus. I will always love you. But I will not enable you. I will not protect you from the results of your choices. And I will not pretend that everything's okay when it's not." Robert's final words rang through the courtroom. "When you come out of jail, if you've truly changed, if you've done the work, if you've become the man I know you can be, then we can talk about rebuilding our relationship. But not one day before." The courtroom was utterly silent. Marcus stood, and despite the bailiff's presence, despite protocol, he took 3 steps toward his father. Robert opened his arms, and father and son embraced fiercely. "I'm sorry, Dad," Marcus sobbed into his father's shoulder. "I'm so sorry for everything. For embarrassing you, for letting you down, for—" "Sure," Robert said, his own tears flowing freely now. "I know, son. I know. Now go do your time. Do it with dignity. Learn from it. And come back to us a better man." They held each other for another long moment before Robert gently pushed Marcus back toward the bailiffs. "I love you," Robert said. "I love you too, Dad," Marcus replied. "Thank you. Thank you for not giving up on me." "Never," Robert said firmly. "I'll never give up on you. But I'm also never going to let you off easy again." Judge Chen, who had been watching this exchange with evident emotion, spoke gently. "Chief Trump, what you've done here today took tremendous courage. This court commends you." Robert nodded, unable to speak. He returned to his seat next to his wife, who gripped his hand tightly, tears streaming down her face. As the bailiffs began to guide Marcus toward the side door that would take him to the holding cells, Harold Peterson raised his hand slightly, the movement stiff due to his ongoing injuries. "Your Honor," Harold said, his elderly voice carrying surprising strength, "may I say something before he goes?" Judge Chen's expression softened. "Of course, Mr. Peterson. This court recognizes Harold Peterson." The bailiffs paused again. Marcus turned to face the man he'd victimized, his face a portrait of shame and regret. Harold maneuvered his wheelchair slightly, positioning himself to look directly at Marcus. The courtroom waited. "Young man," Harold began, and there was no anger in his voice, no bitterness, only a profound sadness and wisdom earned through decades of life, "I want you to know something important." Marcus nodded, tears still streaming down his face. "I forgive you." Those 3 words seemed to echo through the courtroom like a benediction. Marcus's knees buckled slightly, and a bailiff steadied him. "I forgive you," Harold repeated, "not because what you did was acceptable. It wasn't. Not because it doesn't still hurt. It does, every single day. Not because you've earned it. You haven't, not yet. But because I've lived 78 years on this earth, and I've learned that carrying hatred in your heart only poisons you. It doesn't hurt the person you hate, it hurts you." Harold's weathered hands gripped the arms of his wheelchair. "I served in Korea. I saw boys your age do terrible things and beautiful things, sometimes on the same day. I've seen people at their worst and at their best. And I've learned that almost everyone is capable of both cruelty and kindness. The question is which one you choose to feed." He paused, letting his words sink in. "You've been feeding the wrong wolf, son. You've been nurturing arrogance, entitlement, and disrespect. And look where it got you." Marcus nodded, unable to speak. "But forgiveness doesn't mean no consequences," Harold continued, his voice growing stronger. "You're going to jail. You're going to lose your privileges. You're going to have to rebuild your life from scratch. And that's exactly what should happen. Forgiveness and accountability aren't opposites, they're partners. I can forgive you while still demanding you face justice." Harold adjusted his position in the wheelchair, wincing slightly from the pain. Marcus flinched, visibly reminded of the injury he'd caused. "I'm going to tell you what I expect from you," Harold said. "When you're in jail, I expect you to use that time wisely. Read books. Take classes. Think deeply about who you are and who you want to be. Don't waste those months feeling sorry for yourself. Use them to grow." He raised one finger. "When you get work release and come to serve your community service hours with veterans like me, I expect you to show up on time, work hard, and listen more than you talk. Learn our stories. Understand what service means. Let our experiences teach you about sacrifice, duty, and honor." A second finger went up. "When you write that letter of apology, I expect genuine words, not something designed to manipulate or avoid further consequences. I'll know the difference. I've lived long enough to recognize real remorse when I see it." A third finger. "And when you get out, when you've paid your debt to society, I expect you to take what you've learned and use it to help others. Find young men heading down the same path you were on and show them a better way. Turn your mistake into a mission." Harold lowered his hand, and his expression softened. "If you do all that, Marcus Trump, then maybe, just maybe, this horrible incident will have served a purpose. Maybe you'll save someone else from making your mistakes. Maybe you'll prevent another elderly person from being assaulted by some arrogant kid who thinks he's above the law." He locked eyes with Marcus. "Your father gave you the gift of accountability. The judge gave you the gift of structured consequences. I'm giving you the gift of forgiveness. But the hardest gift, the gift of transformation, that one you have to give yourself. Nobody can do that work for you." Harold's voice dropped to almost a whisper, but in the silent courtroom everyone heard him clearly. "I'll be watching your journey, son. I'll be praying for you. And I'll be hoping that when I see you again in 3 months for that letter reading, I'll see a different person standing before me. Not the arrogant boy who pushed me down, but a humble young man ready to build himself back up. You will, Marcus managed to choke out. I promise you will, Mr. Peterson. Thank you. Thank you for your grace. I don't deserve it, but I promise I'll earn it. Harold nodded slowly. Good. Then get going. You've got work to do. As the bailiffs finally led Marcus from the courtroom, he walked differently than he'd entered. His shoulders were no longer swagger-straight with arrogance, but bowed with the weight of genuine remorse and responsibility. He looked back once, at his father, at Harold Peterson, at Judge Chen, and then he was gone, through the door that led to the county jail. The courtroom slowly began to empty. News reporters rushed to get statements. Community members hugged Harold Peterson, many crying. Chief Robert Trump and his wife sat holding each other, emotionally exhausted. Judge Chen returned to her chambers, where her clerk found her staring out the window at the city below. That was remarkable, Your Honor, the clerk said. In all my years, I've never seen anything like that. Judge Chen turned from the window. Justice isn't just about punishment, Sarah. It's about restoration, healing, transformation. Today, we got a chance to see all three in action. Do you think he'll really change? Sarah asked. Judge Chen was silent for a moment. I've been doing this for 30 years. I've seen people with every advantage squander their potential, and I've seen people with nothing build remarkable lives. Marcus Trump has something rare now. People who love him enough to hold him accountable, a victim who's chosen grace over grudges, and consequences that are firm but not crushing. Whether he changes or not, that's up to him now. She returned to her desk and picked up the next case file. But I believe in second chances, Sarah. I have to. Otherwise, what are we doing here? Part 6. 3 months later, the letter. The same courtroom that had been packed with outrage 3 months earlier was packed again today, but the energy was different. Anticipatory. Curious. Hopeful. Marcus Trump sat at the defense table in his orange jail jumpsuit, looking thinner and somehow older than his 23 years. His hair was shorter, his eyes clearer. 3 months of sobriety, structure, and serious self-reflection had changed something in his face. Judge Chen entered, and everyone rose. She'd been following Marcus's progress through regular reports from the jail. He'd completed 2 anger management courses, started individual therapy, joined a book club, and tutored other inmates in basic math. His behavior had been exemplary. But today was the real test. Mr. Trump, Judge Chen said once everyone was seated, you're here to fulfill a requirement of your sentence. You've written a letter of apology to Mr. Peterson, and you will now read it aloud to this court and to him. Please approach the podium. Marcus stood, holding a handwritten letter on simple lined paper. His hands trembled slightly as he walked to the podium. Harold Peterson sat in his wheelchair in the front row, his expression neutral but not unkind. Marcus unfolded the letter, took a deep breath, and began to read. Dear Mr. Peterson, 3 months ago, I stood in this courtroom and apologized to you. But I've learned that saying sorry once isn't enough. Real apology is a process, not an event. It requires understanding what you did, why it was wrong, and committing to change. So today, I want to try again, with more honesty, more humility, and more understanding than I had before. On that Friday afternoon outside Fletcher's hardware store, I didn't see you as a person. I saw you as an obstacle, an inconvenience, something in my way. I've had to face the ugliest truth about myself, that I'd stopped seeing people as human beings with their own lives, their own struggles, their own dignity. I saw them only in relation to me, how they could serve me or how they annoyed me. That's the real crime I committed, Mr. Peterson. Yes, I shoved you and broke your hip and left you bleeding on the concrete. Those are the facts of what happened. But the deeper crime was that I'd stopped recognizing the humanity in others. I'd stopped caring about anyone but myself. In the past 3 months, I've had a lot of time to think. And I've learned some things about you that make what I did even more shameful. I learned that you served in Korea and earned a Purple Heart. I learned that you taught Sunday school to hundreds of kids over 30 years, including my own sister. I learned that you organized food drives and visited sick children and helped families in crisis. I learned that when my mother was fighting cancer 10 years ago, you brought meals to our house every week. How did I not know these things? How did I know so little about a man who'd given so much to my community, to my own family? The answer is, because I never looked beyond myself. I never cared enough to notice. I can't undo what I did. I can't give you back the months of pain and recovery. I can't erase the fear you must have felt lying on that sidewalk. I can't restore the trust you had in the world that I violated. I can't fix your hip or take away your nightmares or give you back your independence. But here's what I can do, Mr. Peterson. I can change. I can become someone different. I can take this horrible thing I did and use it as fuel for transformation. I can make sure that no other person experiences what you experienced because of me. I can become someone who sees people, who respects people, who serves people instead of hurting them. The judge told me this sentence was designed to transform me, not just punish me. My father told me he loves me too much to protect me from consequences. And you told me you forgave me not because I earned it, but because carrying hate would poison you. 3 of you gave me gifts I didn't deserve. And I promise you, on everything I hold sacred, that I will not waste them. When I finish my sentence, I'm going to dedicate my life to serving veterans like you. I'm going to spend my community service hours not resenting them but learning from them. I'm going to hear your stories, understand your sacrifices, and try, however imperfectly, to honor your service by living differently. I'm also going to find young men like the person I used to be, arrogant, entitled, cruel, and I'm going to tell them my story. I'm going to show them what that path leads to. I'm going to try to save them from making my mistakes. I know you'll never forget what I did, Mr. Peterson. I don't expect you to. But I hope that someday, maybe not today, maybe not for years, you might look at me and see not just the person who hurt you, but also the person who learned from that terrible day. The person who changed because you had the grace to forgive him. I don't expect your forgiveness to be complete or final. I understand that trust is rebuilt through actions, not words. So I won't ask you to trust me again. I'll just try to earn it, day by day, action by action, choice by choice. Thank you for being the kind of man who chooses grace over grudges. Thank you for seeing potential in me when all I saw in myself was shame. And thank you for your lifetime of service to this community and this country. I'm sorry. I will always be sorry. And I will spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of the second chance you gave me. Respectfully and with deep remorse, Marcus William Trump. By the time Marcus finished reading, there wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom. Even Judge Chen had to discreetly dab at her eyes. Marcus carefully folded the letter and looked at Harold Peterson. Harold was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly, and the slightest smile crossed his weathered face. "That's a good start, son," Harold said quietly. "That's a real good start."